Hello everyone, and welcome again to this Easter week devotion as we look at the cross and all that it means for us. Today is Maundy Thursday, and we are reminded of the sorrow and the anguish and the agony that Jesus went through on that night he was betrayed, the night before he was crucified, as he prepared himself. Yes, there was to be physical pain, but actually the thing that was going through him, the agony and the anguish, was this idea that he was going to be a curse for us. He was going to be made sin for us. He was going to take on the sin of the world, as we saw yesterday. And instead of us taking on that curse, he gives us his righteousness, his holiness, his purity, and he takes on our sin and he forgives us, and we are set free. Isn't that good news? That is all that Easter means for us, that Jesus would take on our punishment so that we might be set free. Wow. We're going to continue to look at that today as we look at two verses, one from Galatians 5, one from Galatians 6, which I'm going to read to you now. Brothers and sisters, if I am still preaching circumcision, why am I still being persecuted? In that case, the offence of the cross has been abolished. Those who want to impress people by means of the flesh are trying to compel you to be circumcised. The only reason they do this is to avoid being persecuted for the cross of Christ. It's funny here talking about circumcision and persecution. I don't know what your experience is, but what Paul is talking about in terms of circumcision, it represents the law. It represents the old order of things. It represents the old covenant. That circumcision was there as a sign that they were God's people, and that by doing that, that would rescue you. And we saw yesterday, there is nothing that we can do to be rescued. There is nothing that we can do in order to be made right with God. It is only by the cross of Christ and him becoming a curse for us that we can come to him. But what circumcision represents is this idea that there is something we can do, something about human achievement that enables us to get to God. I don't know about you, but I love to achieve. I love to do things well. I love to hear the praise of people around me saying, well done, you did a great job there. Excellent, well done. And I see that even in my kids as they start off early in life being driven towards hearing praise and doing things well. Those things are not necessarily a bad thing, but there is nothing about human achievement that enables us to get close to God. And the thing with human achievement is it enables us to be popular. When people say well done, it makes us think, oh, I'm popular, I've done something well, and people like me for it. And people will like me for doing something well. There is something that is popular and something that is helpful for us in terms of the way we feel about human achievement. Something that we can do to get towards God. But that isn't the message of the gospel. That is not the message of the cross. In fact, what Paul is saying here is that the cross is offensive. The cross is offensive because it is grace. It is nothing that we can do. It is only because of Jesus, only because of what he has done, that we can come into a relationship with him. In other words, there's nothing we can do. It hurts our pride because we know we are not good enough. And so the cross can be offensive and it can lead to persecution. Now, you may not necessarily be in a place where you're being openly persecuted by a government or by a particular regime. But one thing is for sure, that if we live by the cross fully, we will be open to ridicule. Jesus himself tells us to expect persecution. And he went through the ridicule, the persecution of believing in the cross, and ultimately to die for us, because he chose to not be popular, but to be faithful. That is the call of the cross on our lives, to be faithful and not popular. He didn't allow the fear of man to guide him. And I don't know about you, I can do that all the time. Oh, if I do this, I'll be popular and that will be the right decision. But God doesn't ask us to make the popular decision. He asks us to make the faithful decision to him and to his cross. So I ask us today, are we living by the fear of man? Are we living to be popular? Or are we living to be faithful to the message of the cross? The message of the cross is scandalous. It means it's grace, it's love. It's not something we can do. And we can celebrate that. But are we ready for all that means? Does that mean we give up our desire to be popular and be willing to be faithful to all that he asks us to do? Let's choose to be faithful today. and give up our right to be popular and choose to leave the fear of man behind, the fear of our circumstances, so that he might get the glory in our lives and we might see his salvation